I bought an expensive ticket to see my favorite artist. When I started recording an excerpt, the woman next to me got angry and threw my cell phone away. If you've ever been to a concert, you know that there's always someone who turns the experience into a nightmare. It could be the guy who's had too much to drink and thinks he's part of the band, the girl who sings so loudly that she overshadows the singer, or the couple who decide to turn the dance floor into a motel room. But nothing, absolutely nothing, beats the woman who decides that the biggest problem in the world is your cell phone. The story begins when I, Jamie, got tickets to see Imagine Dragons in Las Vegas. The show was sold out, the dance floor was full. It was one of those nights that promises to be unforgettable. I went with my friend Marcus, who was also excited, and we took a strategic spot not too far from the stage, but without having to squeeze into the crowd. What made this night even more special was that I'd been saving for months to afford these tickets. This wasn't just any concert for me. It was the first live show I'd been able to attend since my dad passed away last year. He was the one who introduced me to the band, and I'd promised him we'd go see them together someday. Recording a few minutes of their performance wasn't just for social media. It was for him. The show started, and, of course, everyone pulled out their cell phones to record at least a snippet. It wasn't as if I was the only one there recording the moment. There were people with iPhones, Androids, tablets, yes, even that, and even a guy with a GoPro on his chest looking like he was going to document the event for a Netflix documentary. A few rows behind us stood a woman who seemed to be professionally documenting everything, a sleek camera in one hand and a smartphone in the other, occasionally speaking into what looked like a microphone. I later learned her name was Tiffany, and she ran a popular music blog with over 500,000 followers. That's when I saw her, the protagonist of our drama tonight. She was a few rows back, but made a point of staring at me as if I had committed a war crime. Blonde hair and a tight bun, exaggerated makeup, and an expression that mixed boredom with indignation. Unlike everyone else who seemed to be enjoying the show, she kept her arms crossed and looked like she was about to call the venue manager. The first thing I thought was, there you go, one of those. I tried to ignore it, but every time I raised my cell phone, I felt her presence burning my soul. The funny thing was that she didn't seem to mind anyone else recording. Only me, as if I had been personally selected by the universe to be the target of the day. Marcus noticed and laughed. I think you've made an enemy, Jamie. That Karen has been glaring at you for 10 minutes straight. Karen was the perfect name for her, though I didn't know her real one. She embodied every stereotype of the entitled woman who needs to police others' behavior. I continued to enjoy the show, but every time I raised my cell phone, Karen snorted so loudly that you could hear it even over the music. She sounded like a bull about to charge. When I looked out of the corner of my eye, I saw that she was starting to move her hands around restlessly, as if she was internally debating whether or not to act. And that's when I realized she wasn't just going to complain, she was going to do something. And as I found out the hard way, some people just can't accept seeing others enjoying themselves. Hey, you with the blog, Karen suddenly called out to Tiffany. Don't you think it's disrespectful when amateurs record the whole show? Aren't you a professional? Tiffany looked momentarily confused. Everyone records parts of concerts these days, she replied. It's pretty standard. But don't they ruin your professional shots? Karen pressed, clearly fishing for an ally. I tried to ignore it, really. People like her live for attention, and the best way to deal with them is to just get on with life. But the problem is that some people can't stand being ignored. The show was still incredible. Believer was playing, and the crowd was ecstatic. Marcus was jumping by my side. I was singing along and, of course, recording a piece to remember later. That's when I felt an impact on my arm. It wasn't a casual push, like someone accidentally bumping into me. It was deliberate, a dry, sharp slap that made my cell phone almost fly out of my hand. I froze. I took a deep breath and looked away. She was standing there, closer than before, with that annoying smile of someone who thinks they have the right to act as they please. Stop recording. You're ruining the show for everyone, she hissed. I took a deep breath. I didn't even look directly at her, because I already knew that this type loves any excuse to put on an even bigger show. First, let's get to the facts. Everyone was recording. If anyone wanted to watch the show without a single cell phone in sight, the only solution was to close your eyes and imagine it was 1995. Secondly, my cell phone wasn't even that high. I was holding it below my head so as not to disturb anyone. So what was her problem? The answer was simple. She needed to control something or someone. It wasn't enough to enjoy the show. It wasn't enough to live her own life. She needed to make sure that the whole world worked according to her vision. The problem was that I wasn't going to make it easy. Relax, I said, without taking my eyes off the stage. But apparently that answer wasn't enough. Suddenly, I felt her hand on my arm again, this time squeezing hard. What followed was one of the most frighteningly intense looks I've ever seen. She stared at me as if I had killed her family and run off with the car. Her eyes squinted, her breathing heavy. the fury of someone who was about to turn a minor inconvenience into a major event. I could have argued. I could have asked why she only had a problem with my cell phone. I could have pointed out all the other people recording. But somehow I knew that none of it would do any good. She had already decided that I was the villain in her story, and people like that always find a way to make things worse. If it had just been a slap on the arm and a deadly stare, I might have let it go. The show was still incredible. The band was delivering everything, and I just wanted to enjoy the moment. But that woman, she wasn't going to let up. You know when a dog decides to bark at something and just won't stop? It doesn't matter if you ignore it, move away, or even try to convince it that there's no danger. It will keep barking because it needs to show that it's in control of the situation. She was exactly like that. After staring at me for a while as if she was trying to burn me with the force of her thoughts, Karen decided to escalate the situation. Because, of course, making a passive-aggressive comment and pushing my arm hadn't been enough. First, she started muttering, loudly enough for the people around her to notice. My God, can't anyone watch a concert without recording anymore? It's ruining the experience for everyone. This would have been a valid complaint if she had said it at the beginning of the show to all the dozens of people around holding cell phones. But no, she was specifically annoyed with me. I was her mission now. Marcus noticed and was already laughing. He knew this type. Only Karen wasn't joking. She stepped back a little, put her hands on her waist, and looked around as if she were looking for someone. And that's when I realized she wanted an ally. The tactics of this type of person are always the same. They need to turn a small personal problem into a collective movement. If she could get other people to agree with her, that's it. She would have validated the tantrum and felt justified in continuing the attack. And for a moment, it looked like the plan was going to work. An older lady next to her nodded in approval. A guy in the back row gave her a slightly annoyed look. I don't know if at me or at her. What surprised me was seeing Tiffany, the blogger, moving closer, her camera now pointed in our direction rather than at the stage. Great. My humiliation might become content for her followers. But then what Karen least expected happened. The crowd simply didn't care. No one there had paid a lot for a ticket to be someone else's cell phone inspector. The audience was more interested in the music than in Karen's ranting. That should have been the end of the story. A minimally rational human being would have understood the message and moved on. But her? She took it as a challenge. And that's when the real madness began. When the crowd didn't buy her drama, Karen got even angrier. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to come up with a plan to finish me off right there in the middle of the show. She crossed her arms, huffed, and looked around as if she expected a security guard to come and kick the big criminal with the cell phone out. But when that didn't happen, she decided she had to take matters into her own hands. And that's when things escalated to a level one would never have imagined. I was standing there, just enjoying my music and holding the phone at a reasonable height, when out of nowhere I felt an impact. It took me a second to understand what had just happened, but when I looked down, I saw my cell phone on the floor. She had literally hit my hand on purpose. My mind froze. It was no longer a matter of a nagging woman complaining. It was no longer just a problem of one person wanting to impose random rules on others. She had just thrown my cell phone on the ground in the middle of a crowded place where anyone could step on it and break it into 1,000 pieces. By now, Marcus was purple with indignation. Are you crazy? He shouted, looking at her as if he had just seen a live crime. She didn't even blink. Completely cold, she looked at me and shrugged. If you'd been watching the show for real, this wouldn't have happened. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The floor of the venue was cement, and by some miracle, my cell phone fell in such a way that it didn't crack the entire screen. I quickly picked it up and checked it. Small scratches, but nothing serious. But that wasn't the point. The point was, this woman had just assaulted me and damaged my property. That's my dad's memorial video, I said, my voice shaking with emotion and anger. The last recording I have of him before he died is on this phone. For a brief moment, Karen's face registered something, perhaps a flicker of doubt or even shame. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her previous indignation. You should keep precious things at home then, not at a concert, she snapped, but her voice lacked the previous conviction. By now, the people around were realizing that something was going on. Marcus, who no longer had much patience for crazy things, looked at me and asked, "Do you want me to call security?" And that's when the most unexpected plot twist of the night came. Because before Marcus or I could do anything, she turned to the security guards first. Yes, after dropping my cell phone, she was the one who decided to call security. And at that moment, I realized that I was about to enter this woman's twisted logic. Because for this kind of person, reality doesn't matter. What matters is who tells the story first. He's been harassing me all night, she declared loudly, pointing at me. He's been recording me, not the concert. The crowd around us began to murmur. A few people looked confused, clearly having witnessed the entire interaction. Others, who had just tuned in, looked at me suspiciously. Tiffany, the blogger, had stopped recording the stage entirely and was now fully focused on our drama, her camera switching between Karen's angry face and my bewildered expression. If there's one thing I learned at that moment, it's that some people live in an alternative universe, where logic works the other way around. There I was, holding my freshly battered cell phone, while the woman who threw it on the ground marched up to the security guard, as if she were the victim of the night. She approached the huge man in the black t-shirt, and started talking frantically, gesticulating as if she had just witnessed a terrible crime. I couldn't hear everything, but I recognized a few words amidst the chatter. Oh, disrespectful, disruptive, spoiling the show. Oh, right, I was the villain. The enemy of the live experience. The destroyer of magical moments. But lucky for me, the security guard already looked exhausted, just looking at her. This guy probably dealt with drunks, troublemakers, and clueless people every night. And now, right in the middle of a sold-out Imagine Dragons concert, he had to waste time with a woman who thought she was the enforcer of other people's entertainments. Marcus and I approached. Before I could say anything, the security guard looked straight at me and asked, "Okay, what happened?" I took a deep breath and told him what everyone around me already knew. She threw my cell phone on the floor because she didn't want me to record the concert. "He's lying!" Karen interjected. "He was recording ME, not the concert." I asked him multiple times to stop. The security guard blinked a few times, as if he needed to process the information. Then he slowly turned to her. "Did you hit his phone?" And that's when the best part of the night came. She opened her mouth to speak, probably to make up some excuse or distort reality. But before she could, other people around her started to intervene. "I saw it. She slapped his hand," said a woman behind me. "Yes, it was ridiculous. The guy was just recording like everyone else," said another guy. "She's been harassing him for the last 20 minutes, added someone else. I didn't even have to defend myself. The public did it for me. But then a man's voice cut through the crowd. "Actually, I think the lady has a point." Everyone turned to see a middle-aged man in an expensive-looking jacket. These kids today can't experience anything without their phones. It's pathetic. Karen looked triumphant, as if she'd found her champion. "Exactly," she exclaimed. "It's disrespectful to the artists." The crowd, which had seemed united against Karen just moments ago, now seemed divided. A few people nodded in agreement with the man, while others looked annoyed at this new development. "You're defending someone who physically attacked another concert-goer?" Marcus challenged the man. "I'm defending the right to enjoy a concert without a sea of phones blocking the view," the man replied haughtily. The security guard looked increasingly frustrated with this impromptu debate club that had formed in the middle of the concert. Just then, Tiffany stepped forward. "Actually," she said, her voice clear and confident, "I have the whole thing on video." She turned her camera display toward the security guard. "She's been targeting him specifically, even though everyone around was recording. And yes, she definitely hit his phone out of his hand." Karen's face went from triumphant to panicked in seconds. "You can't film me without my permission. That's illegal." Tiffany smiled. "It's a public place, and I'm a journalist documenting a public event. Completely legal." The security guard looked at the video, then at Karen, then at me again. "All right, let's all calm down," he said, clearly trying to defuse the situation before it escalated further. That's when Karen made her biggest mistake. "Do you know who I am?" she demanded, her voice rising above the music. "My husband is on the board of this venue. I can have all of you thrown out." The security guard's expression changed from exhaustion to irritation. "Ma'am, I don't care if your husband owns the whole strip. You can't assault other patrons." "It wasn't assault," she protested. "It was just a phone." Another security guard had joined us now, a woman with a no-nonsense expression. After a brief consultation with her colleague, she turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you have two options. You can move to another section and enjoy the rest of the show, or you can leave the venue. Your choice." Karen looked stunned, as if she couldn't believe this was happening to her. But he was the one causing trouble." The female guard wasn't having it. Final warning. Move or leave. For a moment, it seemed like Karen might actually comply. She looked around, perhaps hoping for more support from the crowd. But the man in the expensive jacket had mysteriously disappeared, and most people had returned their attention to the stage, where the band was launching into one of their biggest hits. "This is ridiculous," Karen finally exploded. "I paid good money for these tickets. I've been coming to shows here for years." "And that's option 2, the female guard said calmly, taking Karen by the elbow. "Let's go." Karen tried to jerk away. "Don't touch me. Do you know who my husband is?" As she was being escorted out, Karen kept looking back, her face a mixture of rage and disbelief. She pointed at me one last time. "This isn't over." The security guard turned to Marcus and me. "You guys good to enjoy the rest of the show?" We nodded, still a bit stunned by the whole experience. As Karen disappeared into the crowd, being led toward the exit, Tiffany approached me. "Hey, I got the whole thing on video. Do you mind if I use it for my blog? I'll blur your face if you want." I hesitated. Part of me just wanted to forget the whole incident and enjoy what was left of the concert. but another part of me wanted Karen's behavior to be exposed. Go ahead, I said finally. Someone needs to show what these entitled people are really like. Tiffany smiled. Thanks. And for what it's worth, I'm really sorry about your phone. And your dad. With Karen gone, the rest of the concert was amazing. The band played all their hits. The crowd was electric. And for a while, I almost forgot about the whole incident. But as we were leaving the venue, Marcus nudged me. Check this out, he said, showing me his phone. Tiffany had already posted the video with the caption, Concert Karen gets owned. Entitled woman tries to police concert goer, gets escorted out. The comments were flooding in, with most people expressing outrage at Karen's behavior. But there were also those defending her, arguing that phone zombies were ruining live experiences for everyone. Well, Marcus said with a grin, looks like you're viral. What did we learn today? Some people just can't stand to see others happy. Now tell me, have you ever had an experience like that? Someone who tried to turn a small personal annoyance into a big war? Or do you actually side with Karen? Do you think phones should be banned at concerts? The comments are already divided on Tiffany's post, with some people calling Karen a, quote, psycho, while others say she had a point about phones ruining the concert experience. What about you? Have you ever had to deal with someone like this, who simply can't bear to see others happy and will do anything to ruin the moment? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. Want to see more absurd stories like this? Click on the card and don't waste any time. See you in the next video.